One thing
We'll
that
see.
as I am thinking about the reentry, when this first kicked off, the whole COVID thing, Brian, we did a lot of talk about what's going on in the world, revival-wise, and any time that there's suffering and the kind of pain, we see that throughout history, people turn to God. As this thing has progressively went on, now there's different opinions about how people feel about this, and today I was listening on Breakpoint to John Stone Street, who is at the Colson Center, and he was just reading kind of his daily review. And one of the observations that he was sharing that he had been informed by is, it might not be as big of a return as many people are thinking. It could be that this could have been the perfect potion to secularize people here in America, like went on in the UK in maybe the 60s. And so this idea then where we could have the perfect storm that we need to be praying against, frankly, because we've got all this social media, we've got all these YouTube channels and podcasts where hopefully people haven't got too comfortable with thinking, I don't need community. Mm-hmm. So if another thing you start thinking, like, well, if I was pastoring or whatever, and it's like how important it's going to be to talk about why we need the body of Christ, the fleshly body of Christ, because we could almost become anesthetized to our relational need when we have so much accessible to us via social media.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the phones and speak with Monica in Orange County, who was asked a very interesting question recently. Monica, what was that question, and who asked it?
Well, I spoke with my friend. Can you guys hear me clearly?
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, because I know my phone cuts off sometimes. Yeah, so I was talking to my friend this morning. I received a call, and she's just a new believer, about a year or so, and she asked me, she was just diagnosed with being tested positive for COVID, and she's like, how is it that a loving God, that talks about in the Bible that he's going to protect us, cover us, and so forth, in different scriptures, how can he protect me if he allowed me to get this? And I had no words. I mean, I wanted to make sure that I gave her the right words and the right scriptures. And I just told her, you know what, let me look in deeper and I will get back to you. Because it is a touchy question, So what advice can you guys give me?
Okay. Bobby?
Every worldview has an answer to the problem of suffering and evil, but not every worldview has a good answer to the problem. A Buddhist might say to something like this that, all of this is an illusion, like Mary Baker Eddy in Christian Science would kind of look at sickness and suffering and, this is just all an illusion. Some will go so far as to rejecting medications. A Hindu could look at this and just say, this is bad karma, and if you end up getting it, you're just reaping the karma. And it really breaks down empathy in a culture because it's hard to be empathetic when somebody's suffering if you have a mindset that says, they're just getting what they deserve. And so it might help you to cope, and it might give you an answer for how to deal with that, but it doesn't necessarily get to the heart of the issue. On Islam, one could say that, this is the result of Allah issuing, suffering and punishment, or they could also recognize it in a troubled world such as we live in, that this would happen on natural causes. When it comes to atheism, a lot of times it's the atheists that pitch this question, how could a loving God allow me to get this? That's an interesting question in a lot of ways, coming from an atheist, in that on their worldview, this explanation that they have to offer is what? I mean, we're just totally, dancing to the tune of our DNA, as Richard Dawkins has said. We're experiencing deterministic outcomes in everything that happens. There is no free will, and we just live in a world where this kind of stuff happens. On a Christian worldview, I think we can say that God created a world in which there was free will. And in a world where there's free will, it means that we could reject him, and we did. And as a result of this great rebellion against God, we live in a world that experiences natural evils and moral evils. Moral evils are where free creatures freely rebel against him. Natural evils are the evils such as COVID-19 that happen in a fallen world. Our explanation is we know this wasn't the ideal world that God wanted for us to live in, And we know that God entered into our world to deal with our sin and suffering on the cross. And we know that ultimately those who believe in Jesus will go to the new Eden and be free of a world of things like COVID-19.